my blissful selves. Today, let us know in brief about Brahmacharya. Brahmacharya means the mind moving towards Brahman. Brahman means existence, consciousness, bliss. And if that is the case, who is Brahmachari? Usually it has been said, Brahmacharate iti Brahmachari. Brahmachari is one whose mind moves towards Brahman. And what is Vishayacharya? Like Brahmacharya, there is Vishayacharya. Vishayacharya means mind moving towards sensory objects. Vishayas, sensory objects. And if that is the case, who is Vishayachari? Vishayachari is one whose mind moves towards sensory objects or towards the Vishayas. Generally, the mind moves towards sensory objects only. Why the mind moves towards sensory objects only? Because the mind has thought that the sensory objects are givers of bliss. And if we reason out whether there is bliss in sensory objects or not, we will realize that there is no happiness in sensory objects. How there is no happiness in sensory objects? There is no happiness in sensory objects because the sense enjoyment ends in a tiresomeness and weariness. And as we go on enjoying the sensory objects, the desire to enjoy the sensory objects increases. So in this way, there is no happiness in sensory objects. The Brahmacharya is of two types. One is a physical Brahmacharya and the other is mental Brahmacharya. In physical Brahmacharya, the body has to be controlled. But in mental Brahmacharya, the mind has to be controlled. The sexual indulgence is only for reproduction. But the men and women think that the happiness is in sexual indulgence. So this is the misunderstanding of human individuals. And the sexual indulgence in society has been continued, thinking that the sexual indulgence gives the people want the sexual indulgence, but they don't want the children. They don't take the responsibility of children. There are two types of brahmacharis. One is Naishtika Brahmachari and the other is Nuta Brahmachari. And if that is the case, who is a Naishtika Brahmachari? Naishtika Brahmachari is one who has no desire of sex. Even when one is amidst the men and women of the whole world. And who is Nuta Brahmachari? Nuta Brahmachari is one who indulges in sex with one's own wife or husband according to the rules of married Brahmacharya. According to Nuta, Nuta means married, Sreshta, the great. So according to Nuta Brahmacharya, husband and wife should not indulge in sex the first 5 days after monthly course and during pregnancy and after delivery till the monthly course begins. The day of birth of husband and wife, the lunar day of husband and wife, the star of husband and wife, the 11th and 12th day after Purnima and Amavasya, the Purnima day, the Amavasya day. This law holds good if the couple is desirous of having children. And if the couple have no desire to have children, there should not be or they should not indulge in sex. And this is only possible if they have no craziness or infatuation over sex. There should not be any desire in the mind to have contact with any men and women of the whole world. So this is what is meant by Naistika Brahmacharya. But generally, people have not been in a position to give up the sexual indulgence by the body. And if that is the case, how they can give up the desire of sexual indulgence in the mind? It is very, very difficult. And usually, there is a period of sexual indulgence in animals. This is for 3 or 4 days only. In a year, they involve in sex only for 3 or 4 days. Later, they don't involve in sex at all. Even in men and women, there is the period of sexual indulgence. The animals don't involve in sex outside the period of sexual indulgence. But man involves in sex outside the period of sexual indulgence. In this way, man is inferior to animals in sexual indulgence. During Nuta Brahmacharya, the husband and wife sleep together, but they should not involve in sex. It is very, very difficult. But in Naistika Brahmacharya, there is no contact of man and woman. So Naistika Brahmacharya is easy. But Nuta Brahmacharya is very, very difficult. So Nuta Brahmacharya is the greatest one. Nuta means the great. The man and woman contact or the sexual indulgence is not necessary to maintain the livelihood of the body. To live, man requires food, water, wind, and fire. So these are more than sufficient. But the sexual indulgence is not at all necessary to maintain the livelihood of the body. The rules of Nuta Brahmacharya are there for the limitation of sexual indulgence. And whatever the energy is there in the body, it is there in the semen or the so-called vital fluid. The period of sexual indulgence in Nuta Brahmacharya is the 11th and 12th day after the monthly course according to zoology, according to science. The egg is waiting at the end of the fallopian tube for 48 hours to receive the sperm. If the people don't involve in sex on the 11th and 12th day after the monthly course, there will be no fertilization and the children will not all be born. So this is all about, in a brief, about the Brahmacharya. And by this, I end my talk.